Atara Biotherapeutics, a biotech company, is on a promising path with its advanced cell therapy, tab-cel, targeting Epstein-Barr virus infection and cancer. Despite uncertainties in their financial situation, recent partnerships and potential revenue growth from tab-cel offer hope for an extended cash runway. While they faced a trial setback last year, ongoing revenue generation and partnerships paint an optimistic picture. The main focus is on tab-cel, approved in Europe for EBV-associated post-transplant lymphoproliferative disease. With plans to seek FDA approval in 2024 and encouraging results, the company's future looks promising, though caution is advised due to potential trial risks. ATA-188, a T-cell therapy for multiple sclerosis, faced a setback when its Phase 2 study, EMBOLD, failed to show disability improvement at 12 months. Despite promising results in a prior Phase 1 study where it demonstrated a 33% reduction in disability, the Phase 2 study only showed a 6% improvement. The project's status is uncertain as it's no longer featured prominently and the company is exploring options. Atara Biotherapeutics is focusing on developing ATA-3219, an allogeneic T-cell product targeting CD19, akin to approved CR T-cell therapies for B-cell malignancies. While clinical data is pending, the company has received IND clearance for studies in patients with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and systemic lupus. As of the latest quarterly filing, Atara Biotherapeutics had $18.7 million in total current assets, including $64.8 million in cash and equivalents. Revenues, primarily from sales of their approved therapy, amounted to $2.1 million. Operating expenses totaled $71.8 million, resulting in a net loss of $69.8 million. The reported cash runway is limited to a few quarters, but this doesn't consider the $15 million from a recent offering or the $27 million upfront cash from the agreement with Pierre Fabre Laboratories. The company suggests these funds are sufficient for upcoming milestones. Strength. Riding the wave of tab-cel's market expansion. Even after selling their key asset, Atara Biotherapeutics, ATRA, can still ride the wave of tab-cel's growing market. Pierre Fabre's efforts to boost sales of this approach could significantly contribute to increasing revenue. Weakness. Earnings capped. Cash runway. Uncertain. Understanding ATRA's current cash position and burn rate is tricky. While workforce reductions will cut costs, the situation remains financially challenging. The projected cash runway of only 2 quarters raises concerns, and more clarity is needed in the upcoming earnings call. Weakness. Lack of late-stage pipeline drugs. With the apparent failure of their multiple sclerosis drug, ATRA faces uncertainty about their next steps. Their next venture, an early-phase drug in a crowded field for heme malignancies, indicates a longer wait for significant catalysts. ATRA heavily relied on positive results from their Phase 2 multiple sclerosis study. Now, with potential development halts, the company faces an unclear path forward. Yet, with a market cap of $122 million, ATRA has opportunities. If they address the cash burn rate, potentially through trial wind-downs, increased tab-cel sales, and new approvals, the outlook could improve. While there's a risk of inertia for a while, the company's multi-pronged approach makes the current market cap of just over $100 million seem like a potential bargain. Atara Biotherapeutics, ATRA, experienced a surge of approximately 22% following the publication of Phase 3 allele study data for its leading candidate, tab-cel, in the Lancet Oncology. This T-cell therapy met its primary goal in treating patients with Epstein-Barr virus-positive post-transplant lymphoproliferative disease, EBV plus PTLD. According to peer-reviewed data, 22 out of 43 EBV plus PTLD patients demonstrated an objective response, indicating an impressive overall response rate of around 51%. Notably, the experimental therapy showed good tolerance with no adverse effects like cytokine release syndrome, a common safety concern in CAR T-cell therapy. ATRA, remains on schedule to submit a marketing application for tab-cel to the FDA in Q2 2024. Atara Biotherapeutics faced an 80% drop in its stock price post the failure of ATA 188 in a multiple sclerosis phase 2 study, which, in the analyst's view, was an exaggerated market reaction. However, ATRA has implemented strategic measures like restructuring, a tab-cel deal with Pierre Fabre, and reduced R&D expenses, extending its cash runway beyond Q3 2025. The tab-cel agreement involves Pierre Fabre taking over all associated costs, an upfront payment of $30M to ATRA, and potential milestone payments totaling up to $640M, along with substantial royalties on peak sales exceeding $500 million in the US. tab-cel, Atara Biotherapeutics allogeneic T-cell immunotherapy, has its sights set on EBV-infected B cells, specifically for EBV-associated post-transplant lymphoproliferative disease, EBV plus PTLD. Picture this. For those who've undergone a solid organ transplant, SOT, after rituximab treatments failed, or an allogeneic hematopoietic cell transplant, HCT, post-rituximab failure, tab-cel steps in. Europe has already given it a nod, and a BLA is set for the US in Q2 2024. Now, in the population dealing with this issue, survival stats are grim, with a median overall survival of 0.7 months in HCT and 4.1 months in SOT. But enter tab-cel. In the ongoing Phase 3 allele study, approximately 51% of patients responded to tab-cel, 50% for HCT patients, a potential game changer. Switching to a different lot might boost responders by 29%. But wait, there's more on Atara's agenda. They're eyeing the development of tab-cel in other patient groups, especially those with immunodeficiency-associated lymphoproliferative diseases, IALPDs. Why? These share the EBV-driven disease mechanism coupled with a high medical need. So, Atara's embarked on a multi-cohort Phase 2 study in the US and EU covering 5 patient populations. Let's dive into the regulatory saga of tab-cel. Now, the main hurdle it faces, quite common for cell therapies, is the chemistry, manufacturing, and controls, CMC snag. The FDA usually wants a clinical trial using the exact product slated for commercial use, a hurdle seen in the CAPIR case too. This has led to a US regulatory bottleneck despite getting the green light in Europe a year back. Atara Biotherapeutics, ATRA, has been in the FDA's ear, trying to hash out a pathway sans a new clinical trial. Fair play, considering the targeted indication is ultra-rare. ATRA is expecting the FDA to cut some slack too, given tab-cel's efficacy in treating this rapidly fatal ultra-rare condition. All right, let's break down the recent updates on ATRA and its dance with the FDA. Good news. It looks like they're getting on the same page. Following a recent announcement by ATRA, it seems there's finally some harmony between them and the FDA. What does that mean? Well, they can now pool data from different process versions in the BLA submission, a key step in the regulatory process. So, what's next? ATRA plans to chat with the FDA in early 2024 and aims to send in the BLA in Q2 2024. Of course, there's still a chance of delays, but the stars seem to be aligning for the following reasons. The deal with Pierre Fabre. Speaking of Pierre Fabre, here's the lowdown on their deal. Initially, ATRA gave Pierre Fabre the exclusive rights to Evalo in certain regions. But in October 2023, they decided to expand that, giving Pierre Fabre the green light to do its thing with tab-cel in all countries worldwide. So what does all this mean for ATRA's finances? Well, The current deal with Pierre Fabre isn't expected to bring in massive revenue anytime soon. Sure, they reported $2 million in commercialization revenue in Q3, but it's a bit like a drop in the bucket considering ATRA's overall cash situation. But hey, the bigger picture is promising. With Pierre Fabre handling the costs and the FDA talks moving forward, things are looking up. The regulatory hurdles might not be a cakewalk, but ATRA seems to have a strong case. Why Pierre Fabre? So, ATRA chatted with a bunch of other pharma players, big and mid-sized, but they stuck with Pierre Fabre, and here's why. Cash talks. A big part of it was ATRA's financial situation. Pierre Fabre is offering a sweet upfront payment, and you know in business, cash on the table talks loud. Cost cutters. Pierre Fabre isn't just handing over cash, they're taking the tab-cel reins. That means ATRA doesn't have to sweat the costs and can focus on its other projects, especially the CAR-T pipeline. Commitment. ATRA sees Pierre Fabre as more than just a business partner. Tab-cel is like Pierre Fabre's star player in the US, so they're all in. Simplicity. Managing one partner is easier than juggling multiple, especially when things get complex. Now let's talk numbers. Pierre Fabre is dropping $30 million up front plus $100 million in milestones, and they're taking on all the costs. That's a strong sign that they believe tab-cel is worth way more than $130 million. ATRA is eyeing a peak sales potential of over $500 million in the US alone. If they get double-digit royalties, that could mean more than $50 million in yearly revenue for ATRA. For a biotech, an EV sales ratio of 7 is pretty standard. So even if ATRA rakes in just $25 million in yearly revenues, that would make for a fair enterprise value of $175 million. Now in Europe, tab-cel is priced at $640,000. With US prices typically higher, that could mean around $830,000 to $890,000. To hit $500 million in sales, they'd need about 600 patients yearly. Let's just hope the regulatory hurdles don't throw too many curveballs. Fingers crossed for a smooth ride ahead. So, ATRA's diving into the world of CAR-T cells, a promising but risky game. The catch? It's burning through cash like there's no tomorrow, and there's some fierce competition. Now, this CAR-T thing is still in its early stages from preclinical to phase 1. The big question, will the cool theoretical advantages we're hearing about actually work in real life? We'll know more in H2 2024 when the initial clinical data drops.